Hey, Summit Church fam, this is Jesse here with some good friends of mine, Mike and Becky Qualls, and we have begun a new sermon series at the Summit this past weekend called Togetherness, just kind of focused on our marriage and family relationships and what it looks like to stay together, to stay a unit. Mike and Becky have been doing these kind of conversations and working with families and couples through these kind of conversations for a lot of years now. And I can tell you that this is going to be a treat because I know them and I have seen the way this works out in their family. They practice what they preach. So I'm very excited to have you guys here. But for those who are watching that don't know you as well as I do, why don't you guys give a little bit of kind of your background in this kind of work and how long you've been doing it, what that looks like.
All right. Well, Becky and I are marriage counselors, and this year's 20 years.
Awesome.
That we've had a full-time marriage ministry where we full-time marriage counseling, and then, like you said, speaking, retreats and conferences and moments like this to just be able to speak into marriage and into family life. So we love what we do. It's our passion, and God has given it to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well,
we've been married 34 years, which I think is kind of important to know.
that is a nice tidbit, yes.
Yeah.
We were just talking, both have August anniversaries,
Yes, we
15 and 34. So
Yeah.
awesome. So I'm going to glean something from this too as well. So as we kind of start thinking about this topic of togetherness, I want to pick up off of a big theme from what Pastor Jim has talked about in this first week, and that's this idea of mutual submission and what kind of submitting to one another in a marriage relationship looks like, why it's important. Since y'all are the experts, I'm just gonna kind of get that ball rolling and let you guys take it, and we'll have some good conversation about it. So mutual submission.
Okay, here we go.
Why is that important?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand what it's not.
Yeah.
Right? Mutual submission is not winning and losing. Because if that's what we think of a mutual submission, it becomes a competition.
Right.
And now we're seeing
And that's not togetherness.
that's not togetherness.
Right.
Competition isn't an intimate activity.
Right.
Mutual submission is more about the idea of being willing to look not only to my own interests, my desires, my point of view, my hurts, the way I look at life.
Right.
Looking not only at our own, but also wanting to know that about our spouse.
Yeah, that there's a desire there.
There's
right?
a desire to understand your hurts and your desires and what's important to you.
Yeah.
So we kind of wanted to talk about a heart skill of how being able to understand and show each other that we care about and understand each other's perspective.
What's that look like?
Okay, and we call it a heart skill because we live in a culture that values skills and knowledge, but a lot of times we overlook the heart. Mm-hmm. So we end up with this skill that ends up being kind of empty skill because the heart's not in it. And simply put, the desire to know you, to be able to take your perspective. And that's the heart skill, is perspective taking. Mm-hmm. That I can look at life the way that you look at life and see the value in that, right?
It doesn't mean we see it the same,
Right.
but we're willing to understand
Right.
each other the way that we do see it.
And that's a really great point, because when couples aren't very good at understanding each other, we can end up with this really bad misunderstanding that you just want your way, right? And now we have the battle of you just want your way. What most people really want in their heart of hearts is to feel understood.
Right.
So yeah, so that's what we're after, is the heart skill of perspective taking.
To understand another person's perspective really requires two parts, two pieces, two questions that we must ask.
Can I throw something in real quick?
Oh, sure.
Something that's important here is this is a God skill, because what's normal for most of us is us.
Right. When you were talking about this earlier, it made me think of one of my favorite couple of verses in the New Testament. It's Philippians 2, 3, and 4, where it talks
Right.
about
Exactly.
not counting other people's desires as more important than your own.
Right.
Not seeking that for yourself.
Right.
But that's huge. So yeah, it's 100% a godly perspective, and it takes work. It's not easy. It takes
Yeah,
intentionality.
it doesn't come natural.
Right.
Right.
Because think about it when you guys fell in love. You couldn't help but take her perspective.
Right.
Because
It's easy at that point.
it's easy at that point.
Yeah.
Then what happens is we'll tend to come back to ourselves, because when you're first in love, she was the perspective.
Right.
Now we come back to ourselves in marriage and we go, I am normal. So I get to decide what's too much, what's not enough, what makes sense and what doesn't.
Right.
And now our relationship makes sense based on who I am. And I lovingly ask you to adjust to me. Right?
Yeah.
Won't we be so awesome if you're just like me? So we lose the ability to take each other's
Yeah.
perspective.
So there were two questions to
Two
kind of get
questions.
to that heart skill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the first one is understanding what your perspective is.
Yeah.
What is the way that you see it? What is it that you need? What is it that hurt you? What is it that is your perspective? That is an important piece, because that gives us the first part of information. But the more important question is why? Why do you see it that way?
Right. Now, and why was meant to be an intimate question. A lot of times we use it as a challenging question.
It's
Yes.
interesting.
Right? Prove
Yeah.
yourself to me.
Right.
Bring it hard, bring it strong to change my mind.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And
That's
that
an
is not
interesting
the
way to think
heart
about that.
behind
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And if I view it that way, it's a challenge.
Right.
But if it's an intimate question, what I'm saying is, I want to know you. I want to know how you look at this. Go.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I just think that distinction is so huge.
Yeah.
It's that difference between, it's like, why? It's like this challenge, this wall almost
Right.
goes up of like, well, why? But if you come at that from, and I think this is what you're getting at, if you come at it from that perspective of, I'm wanting to understand you, that helped me understand, like that's such a different
Yes.
heart posture to take than, well, why? That's dumb.
And,
Right.
and,
You know?
and help me understand
Right.
what you just said.
Right.
There is a great phrase.
Yeah.
Help me understand why you see it this way.
Right.
And whether that's in our marriage and with our kids, with family, friends, why is such a important question in understanding a perspective.
Because it'll reveal something about them that's not like you. And now you have a chance to learn about them. Let's give an example.
This is a true story that
True
happened.
story, well, at least based on a true story.
True
Based
stories
on-
with Mike
The
and
names
Becky.
have been changed.
So the
To
kids
protect
were
the
little.
innocent, yeah.
It was winter.
Yes.
It was a blustery
They
day,
were
my
very
friend.
they were very little, and
Yeah.
it was very winter
Yeah.
outside.
And so it's Friday night,
Mhm.
and we're having a conversation about Saturday morning.
And I say it would be really fun to go to breakfast. Now, you have to think back that this was years ago in Lee Summit. There weren't a lot of breakfast
We didn't
choices.
have first
Right,
watch,
right.
right? So here we are, and I said, nah, I'll make breakfast. And then Becky goes, I'd really like to go out to breakfast. And I go, nah, I'll make breakfast. So we had a what discussion. What do you want?
Right.
I want to go out to breakfast. I want to stay home. I'll make breakfast. I even offered to make breakfast. And we just kind of volleyed back and forth.
And then Mike said, so why do you want to go out to breakfast? And I said, the last time I left the house was Monday with 2 children with fevers. They've been sick all week. They're finally healthy. And I would love to sit in a booth and let somebody pour us coffee. And Mike
and
said,
take the dishes away.
yes. And Mike,
That's the key right there.
And then,
yeah, I said that part too.
and then she turned and said, why do you want to? And I go,
I said, why do you want to not go to breakfast?
I go, because I really don't like the breakfast choices in Lee Summit. And then I pause for a second.
Right.
And all of a sudden I go, what would it be like to be trapped in the house with 2 small children for an entire week? And all of a sudden I was able to go, let's go to breakfast.
Let's go to breakfast, right?
And-
You did.
But
Right.
here's why is so important. Because if we would have just volleyed back and forth with what, there's a good chance at some point one of us would go, I don't like how this feels. I don't like the tension of it. So I'm just going to give in so it will go away. So I do that. So I go to breakfast, but I go to breakfast with an attitude. And I'm kind of like, this food is beneath me. And I'm, and you know,
I would have made better waffles at home.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And then I also think she won this time. Next time's my turn, right? And if I don't win, Jesus help us all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So the idea in this heart skill is, does my heart have the desire to know? And do I see value in that? And the tricky part when you've been married a while is the heart already thinks it knows.
Yeah.
I don't have to ask.
Yeah.
I already know. And a lot of times what I've come to know isn't very good. So we have no conversations and we just live with conclusions.
Yeah, I think that a key part of just any kind of relationship, especially marriage relationships, knowing about ourselves. Like I know I'm not the same person I was a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, and I'm not going to be the same person a year or 5 or 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
So I think it's so key to be able to keep that in mind in this kind of dynamic, that my spouse isn't the same. Her perspective has probably changed in the 15 years that we've been married.
Right.
And so I have to make that intentional choice to continue to ask why, to continue to kind of pursue where her heart is and where she is differently now than she was before.
Have you ever had a conversation where your spouse says to you, "Don't worry"? Right?
It's usually me saying that, actually. Probably more than my wife. Don't worry, I got it.
Right. And what if you were to say, "Why does that concern you?" Because we can accidentally cut off understanding.
Right.
Because
And
I
then
can't
we miss that opportunity
to care
for
for each other.
togetherness and
Absolutely.
for doing what's important to each other.
Caring for each other. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that final kind of clarifying question again. So what do we look for, in our spouse? What do we look for to kind of find those opportunities to practice this heart skill?
Right. You want to?
I think opportunities come when we see that maybe we see things differently than each other.
Yeah.
And so understanding conflict doesn't have to be a fight and shouldn't be a fight. It's an opportunity to understand each other better. And so coming back to that mutual submission, it's that putting our own desires aside and understanding each other's desires, and then we can understand once we understand, then we figure out how do we care for each other.
Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Those opportunities come up just when we're faced with differences, a different perspective. And if I'm willing to go there to understand yours and not just go, I have the market cornered on reality and it makes so much sense to me.
Right.
Right. But that we can then have a discussion. And the beautiful thing is it creates flexibility. Because guess what? We don't have to fight to be heard by each other anymore because it's being offered willingly, right? I don't have to try to get your attention in whatever way I can because I don't think you're interested. You're offering it to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just get to talk.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for unpacking this a little bit. I think as we kind of close, we can come back to that, what you said at the beginning. Submission is not competition.
Yeah.
It's not trying to win. It's looking for an opportunity to understand where someone else is coming from, value their heart, value their perspective, put on their glasses, as it were. Thanks for unpacking that a little bit. We're going to have a couple more conversations over the next couple of weeks with Mike and Becky. So tune in next week as well as we continue to talk about togetherness. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.